hey, welcome to the Lady J Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
Tyler.
And guess what? We're here at Bar Our Wagyu with Arlie and Taylor. And I just feel like I'm talking to you guys on like your wedding day, because like you guys are just, it's like you're the bride of the wedding day, and we got like 5 minutes with you guys because it's a big day today happening at Bar Our Wagyu. So what is happening? Can you explain this Wagyu Cattle Auction?
Yeah, so today we are having our 5th Wagyu production sale. Mm-hmm. So behind us we have 55 head of cattle, Wagyu cattle, that we will be selling in our auction today. These are all breeding stock animals, so not necessarily selling for beef. They're selling to other breeders to continue breeding Wagyu that will eventually produce Wagyu beef. So it's a big day. In our family, cattle auctions are bigger deals than weddings.
So this is even more important.
It's a big deal.
That's very true.
It is, and it brings the whole family in. It's a big family effort, and we couldn't do it without a lot of friends and family helping make this happen.
Cool.
Wow, well, thanks for welcoming us into your home. You guys have been so generous. It's so beautiful out here in Pullman, Washington.
I feel so good.
Tyler,
I am in my element.
You should have seen Tyler stroll up here, just freaking kicks out the door. He's climbing the fences. He hasn't even met anybody here yet, and he's already touching the cows, man. It was a sight to see.
I think you were trying to get on one yesterday.
Possibly. I think somebody might have yelled at me. I don't remember.
What's the name?
Sugar Tani.
Yeah.
Big Sugar Tony? Is that what it is?
Sugar.
That's a good nickname.
That would be good.
I know. I'm
the other nickname is Cupcake.
Cupcake.
Oh yeah, because he likes cupcakes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So how much does that big beef weigh?
I was guessing.
Roughly?
He won't even fit through that scale in there.
That thing, I walked in, I was like, that's the biggest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
About 2,000 pounds?
About, yeah.
Wow.
That was my guess, too.
And how old is that cow?
So 30T, he's up on the hill. He's 17 years old, which for a bull, that's a pretty good age. We're hoping he makes it to 20, and that would be a pretty big deal.
And
so
is he a main breeder or what?
He is. Wow. So he's one of our best well-balanced bulls that we've ever produced, and the fact that he's lived this long is just incredible. And he's kind of a family pet at this point. We feed him cupcakes.
Wow.
That's why we call him Cupcake. I love it. So let's talk a little bit about Wagyu, because we did a little Wagyu 101 with about a year ago, and you guys were really like our number one like resource. So let's talk a little about Wagyu beef, kind of refresh it. So what is Wagyu? What makes these animals so special?
These animals are really special because they are a great meat quality carcass grading animal. Yep. This breed is genetically predispositioned to marble. Yeah. And that marbling in the meat is what makes them so special. Yeah. So they're just predisposed to do that, and that elevates the eating experience, right?
Absolutely.
If we could all enjoy prime beef all the time, that's what the industry's striving for. Yeah. So these animals help reach that goal, and they all go prime, and they're all a fantastic eating experience, and they're great cattle to work with. They're more docile, I would say, especially on the bull side than other breeds of cattle.
Okay.
I haven't gotten headbutt yet.
Yeah, this guy's been close, man. He's been sticking his
I'm
head
not counting the chickens yet.
So like raising these cattle, what are some of the differences? What do you need to know about raising Wagyu cattle, since we're at this auction here?
So Wagyu cattle, at the end of the day, they're cattle. And you just treat them like cattle, raise them like cattle. They're very versatile. I think people think, we need to pamper these guys. We need to take extra care of them. They're really fantastic in all environments. So we've got friends that run them in northern Canada. Okay. We got people that we know that are in the southern part of the hemisphere, in South America, South Africa, Australia, Texas. Yep. They handle heat well. They handle cold well. They're very hardy animals. Well, and in Japan, they used them as draft animals. Yeah. And I think that really builds in their, versatility. They could just live anywhere and thrive anywhere. That's just have to give them the resources, give them food, water, and make sure they have some shelter from the weather if it gets real bad, but that's all you need.
So when you auction off one of these big boys today, do you follow where they go, and like, are they going to be crossbred with Angus and do like the F1 cross or anything like that?
Yes. They're gonna go to be used for those crosses on Angus, or even the dairy industry. That's really big right now. Okay. Or they'll be in a full blood program or a purebred program. So it's all over the board. We've got a guest here.
Love it. So what do you mean by dairy in the dairy industry?
Yeah.
So how does that happen? I haven't heard of that.
So the dairy industry, they're constantly having calves so they could have milk. Yep. And they found that if they use Wagyu bulls on the dairy cows, then they get a really good premium calf that will be a great end consumer product. And so that's just been a beef on dairy is what you call that. Angus bulls and other beef breeds are crossed on dairy as well. But it is picking up in the Wagyu industry to be a more common thing.
I want some Wagyu milk.
Well, those Holsteins marble pretty well.
Yeah.
So it's a good cross.
Okay. So let me ask you this. What is one fun myth that you kind of like to bust about Wagyu beef? Both of you guys. I'd want to ask both of you guys.
Right. You're out here massaging these guys and feeding them beer and shit. Come on.
That's kind of the expectation that people think of when they think of like Kobe beef or any kind of Wagyu. It's like they get beer and they get massages all the time. And maybe that happens in Japan. Maybe that happens in some places, but I think for the vast majority, like most ranchers in the U.S., do not go to that level. And there's different reasons for that.
And in Japan, they keep the cattle in barns. They don't have the land to work with there. So they're taking care of the animals and they're petting them, they're brushing them. It can be misconstrued as massaging, I suppose. But really, these animals are prized assets, and they're part of our family, so we want to take care of them. But I think that's where that massage myth comes from. And you could think about there's a lot of Wagyu folks feeding them brewer's grain, the leftover grain. And that's a great resource for them, because otherwise that grain would just be dispelled or composted or something. So
you brought up a good point, because when I was researching Wagyu a year ago after I talked to you, I was learning that Japan's very rocky and does not have a lot of grasslands, and we just took a tour. You guys took us on a tour yesterday down to your canyon? Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah, one of the canyon lands.
So cool. And it is it's freaking steep, man. Like, it's steep, and you were telling us that the cattle actually go down there. The Wagyu cattle go down there, and they're more agile because they aren't really as big, except for our big boy up on the hill, which we got to get some photos with later.
Absolutely.
But they can get down and they can get back up, and that's fascinating to me. So is that why? I mean, coming from Japan, are they're kind of the worker animals, and they are more agile, and is that why they could be raised easier in Japan and easier in a place like this that has canyons?
I think so. And one of the things when we're selecting to the next generations for breeding and we're matching up breeding pairs, we pay attention to their how their legs are and their feet, because you want to make sure that they're physically capable to navigate the lands. And there are certain breeds of cattle that can't navigate as well because they don't have the leg structure. So those are things we pay attention to because we want to make sure they're agile.
And I think part of it too is because Wagyu is technically a smaller breed of cattle than like Hereford and Angus and some of these other ones. It makes them more agile to be able to do that. If they're too heavy, they're going to have a harder time navigating some of the steeper terrain and some of those things.
1,000%.
Man.
So I can ride one.
You could.
I want to see you ride the big boy. Man, he might just let you.
You might not get a lot of action. Who knows? But
just be hanging out there.
It'll be a good story.
If you live to tell the tale.
We will see you. We'll get it on video. So you guys do a lot of genetics here, right? So when you think about a cattle farm, you think about having tons of cattle everywhere, and you guys do that, but would you say you're more genetics or 50-50, or kind of talk about that aspect of it that your dad has been really doing since the 80s and 90s? He is really the godfather of, we call him the godfather of American Wagyu. He's so humble, he probably won't admit that, but can you talk a little about what he's done and brought the genetics, and you guys probably have more genetics here than almost anybody in the U.S.
Yeah, the genetics is my main priority is to get the best genetics out there for Wagyu cattle. And there's so much science behind it. We take DNA samples on every animal, and they actually they look at their genomics, because the genes in these animals can dictate how we expect their marbling to be, their ribeye area to be, their carcass weight to be, and even growth potential. And so we do that on every single animal. We've got so much data on them. And then when we have sires that are producing offspring that go into meat production, once those progeny are processed and we can look at their beef, there's data collected on that. So we can actually get hard data on all the offspring from a lot of our sires to really test to make sure that DNA genomics that we were looking at initially and those estimates are actually what they say they are, and prove them out. And so, and it takes years to get data.
Yeah.
By the time we have a bull that breeds a cow and then the calves are born and then they're raised to processing and that meat is on the table, that's 4 years later at the end of the whole, from the calf getting or the cow getting bred. There's so much data behind it. I think that's a huge piece of information that I want to get out there.
What's your average hanging weight?
It depends. If you're talking F1 or full blood, purebred, we have a variety because we do a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So what is F1? What is purebred? What is full blood?
That's a good question. I'd say a range. So a lot of our F1s will be 1,000 pounds to 1,300 pounds. And then our full bloods are anywhere from 650 pounds to 1,000 pounds. Typically, those full bloods are going to be smaller than the F1s because the F1s is a cross between an Angus and a Wagyu. Mm-hmm. So they get more growth from the Angus side and tend to be a bit bigger.
Yeah, so F1 is 50% Wagyu, 50% crossed, usually with Angus. Could be anything.
Could be anything,
yeah. And then purebred is 93.75%.
And above, yep.
And above. And then full blood is
92.8.
100%.
100%.
The American Wagyu Association says 92.8 or higher, and you guys have 100%.
You're thinking of the purebred.
Oh, yeah.
So purebred is, and it's confusing because most cattle breeds, when you say purebred, that actually means 100%. In the Wagyu business, it's different. It's different. So purebred is a 15/16 or more, which is at 93.75% and above. A full blood has to be 100%.
100%.
Okay.
Yes, that's the big difference.
Okay.
Wow. I love it. When we get cattle from you guys, it's different.
It's delightful.
It's really cool.
It's so nice.
I feel like it's the first one we got was about a year ago and had some beautiful yellow fat. So you guys do a lot of they're kind of pasture. I mean, how would you say that they're raised? Pasture, finished on grain, or what is it?
Yeah, all of our cattle spend most of their life on pasture.
That's why you get that yellow fat. Huh?
Yeah, and some of the one
the
one you got was actually a grass-fed one, I think.
Was it?
And that's kind of unique. We don't always do that. In our country, we don't have grass year-round, so doing grass-fed where we are is really difficult. And they can't quite get their protein needs and their nutritional needs just on grass. So we mainly grass feed but grain finish.
Yeah. Totally.
But occasionally do some grass fed. So it's different. But each have great flavor profiles.
It eats different. It looks different.
Because when I think of Wagyu beef, right? We like it because, well, personally I like it because of the marbling, obviously, but I also know that it's more of an expensive cow. So when I think about that, I think about how it's raised. It's usually raised probably better in a smaller facility, in a smaller farm. You think about Tyson, that is just like butchering, slaughtering 10,000 cattle a day in 14 different locations, or a week. I'm sorry. And then you think about Wagyu. It's been raised. It takes longer to raise. It's a more expensive animal. So I personally love that. I love the marbling. I love the care that goes into it. But then you think of maybe a grass-fed Wagyu. I think grass-fed. I think of very not a lot of marbling, but very meaty. Is there that market, or is it still going to be very marbled because of the Wagyu genetics?
I was just going to say that I think it's dependent on the environment that the animal's in. Like if you look at the Seattle area and west of the Cascades, there's a lot more grass for the animal to eat, so it's easier to feed them on pasture throughout the year. And you come over to Eastern Washington, and maybe this isn't a little bit of sidetrack to your question, but on Eastern Washington, you saw the canyon yesterday, and there's grass, but it's not a ton.
Yeah.
And so you've got to supplement with grain.
Yeah.
And so I think the competition between the grass-fed and the grain-fed finished is depends on where you're at, because it's easier to approach that market because you're feeding more efficiently with your cattle.
Okay.
And I've heard meat scientists say that it depends on what you grew up with, what you like, as far as grass-fed versus grain-fed.
Totally.
But I think there's definitely a place in the market for both. There's that demand for both. Yeah. I think about Wagyu and a lot like the wine industry, where you have crosses. just like red blends. You know, you could have all these different concoctions of really amazing flavors, which you can achieve with the Wagyu and different breeds of cattle.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Or the grass-fed, grain-fed, dry-aged, wet-aged. I mean, there's so many different components to it. Even older cows that may be a little tougher but can still marble and provide a different flavor profile. So versatile.
It is. Wow. And it takes longer.
I'm coming back for sugar.
No,
When it's time.
That's not what I say that. What is, Taylor, what's your favorite thing about Wagyu beef? Favorite
The
thing?
beef itself.
Because you were cooking it here yesterday for us. So.
Yeah, getting a lot of experience cooking it yesterday. A lot
a
of chefs watching me cook.
Usually.
Nothing like sweating next to the grill, trying to figure out when to flip it exactly. But I think it's the tenderness for me. Obviously the flavors in there, and I can't describe them super well. But I think they talk about the umami experience type of deal, and I think that's part of it with the flavor profile and then the tenderness as well. And I've just noticed the tenderness on most of these cuts in a Wagyu animal are pretty high. Like it's a lot easier to chew, even when we're doing tests yesterday on certain muscles of the animal, and it's like, oh, this is a little more tough than that one. But
I heard names I've never heard before yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
The meat scientist was giving me all the. I mean, I know about the spinalis and the longissimus. Of course.
Yeah.
what do we have over there? Semimembranosus and
Oh, yeah.
vastus lateralis.
Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, so they took apart the whole leg, and it was really cool because usually you don't think of leg being really good steaks, and so they wanted to kind of show the different, like, can you get tenderness out of all of a Wagyu cattle leg, and
It was delicious.
Even though it's the freaking leg, and some of it was tough. He looked at me one time. He goes, "Yeah, I don't know if this one passed the test, but
Chewy.
most of it was actually really nice and tender, even in the leg part, which is as you always say, very strong muscle. They're standing.
It's a
on
working
the legs.
muscle.
It's a working muscle. There's a lot of collagen in there, right? That's what Tyler always tells me, at least. So.
Collagen break down into elastin, elastin breaks down into gelatin.
You got to get in there. I know. Arlie, what's your favorite thing about Wagyu?
The beef is just amazing. It's a different eating experience.
It is.
And
Yep. It is.
Raising it, I know all that goes into it, and that makes it even that much more special. But it's about the community that you share it with, and that being able to sell our beef and see people experience it for the first time and have people out to the ranch just kind of is so full circle and why we do everything we do when we ranch. So just the experience of eating the beef and sharing it with folks, because it's incredible. It's the best beef in the world.
Certainly is.
In my opinion. I'm biased.
I
but-
mean,
You spoiled.
It's good. No, it's worth it. It's worth it. Like I said, even those leg steaks yesterday.
We always say we're not rich, we're meat rich.
We're meat rich.
That's a great way to put it.
That's
right.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
That's all you need.
I was driving out here. I was like, it is so beautiful on this drive out here, and we're gonna eat some meat today, and we're gonna talk to you guys and hang out. And I'm like, dude, this is pretty freaking nice,
City boy.
dude.
He's converted.
You've converted.
He's gonna be a country guy.
Can't wait to see you next year.
Yeah, I'll be here.
We're gonna have boots next year.
We're coming out. Yeah, I know. I wore my hiking boots today, but I'm gonna have a cowboy hat. What is it? A Stetson?
You get you a Stetson?
Yeah,
There you go. Those are
maybe.
for special occasions
I
only.
know. Well,
That's
this
not
is
an
a
everyday.
special
That's
occasion.
not everyday wearing hat.
No, this is
That's true.
only at the auction. I'm gonna wear one. So
Better be white.
I love it. What else do you guys want the world to know about Wagyu before we sign it off here?
There's a lot of really amazing family ranches raising Wagyu across the country, raising beef. And it's a lifestyle job.
Yeah.
It's your whole life, everything we do. The ranch is at the center of that, and with our family, we make it work. But I want people to know about the families behind the beef, because there are so many families around the country, and it's actually sad to see a lot of ranches be sold off and not continue on, because the beef market, it ebbs and flows, and it could be tough to make ends meet sometimes. I mean, even in the Wagyu, which is a highly prized cattle, a lot of money goes into the input to make everything run and to provide basic husbandry for these animals. So
There's a lot of moving parts.
there's just a lot, and there's like my family. There's
It's one of my
thousands of families that are behind these ranches, and I think we're doing a better job as an industry of inviting people out to see the ranch and be more transparent. So I just want people to know that there are local farmers all over, and if you find them, then you could build relationships with them and come see where your food comes from, and that's a really cool experience.
No fucking where your food comes from.
Yes.
Like when we come here and see this, there's a huge difference between this and then, like I said, a Tyson farm that's just slaughtering 10,000 cattle a week, So.
And I'll make a point too. What's really, I think, misunderstood, and I'll let you talk, honey, but a lot of those cattle that end up in the big feed yards come originally from small family farmers.
For sure.
Okay.
And so the efficiencies that are demanded in the beef industry are that where you do have these feed yards that have thousands and thousands of cattle, but those feed yards purchase cattle from small family farms like ours that are raised on grass and have family farms. So the system and how a lot of cattle progress through the system is interesting. There's dynamics to it. The farmer sells to a feeder, and then the feeder sells to a processor, and a processor will sell to distributors or whatnot. But again, I go back to where there's families behind the cattle. Yeah. Even if they end up in a bigger feed yard,
it started small.
It started small.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
I think you were kind of touching on what I was going to say, but I think Arlie was saying is we need the efficiencies because I think we're talking about the world population increasing, and there's so much. I think there's a lot of negativity against the beef industry as a whole, or more like even if it's pork and chicken, whatever. But I think there's going to be a growing demand for more food and more protein sources, and if we cut back the beef industry, it's going to be really hard to feed people, and I think that would even just kind of perpetuate the problem. So I think that's another important thing is it's not just the Wagyu, it's the cattle industry as a whole, whether it's Angus and Hereford, like we need it there to be able to feed people in the future. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like is it sustainable,
That's
to
right.
be able to raise cattle on small farms and be able to feed the world? That's a huge question. It is hard, right? There is a demand.
It's expensive.
But if you know where your meat comes from, I think that's what we're trying to really talk about. Know where your meat comes from, and you don't have to eat you guys would never supply McDonald's because you'd never be able to do that, right? But if you go to your local butcher shop or your local farmer or your local store, that you can ask the butcher, ask the person behind the counter where their meat comes from. And if they know, it comes from our ranch in Pullman, Washington. I just talked to Arlie yesterday. Then that it's more legit than going to just some other store and somebody going, I don't know, it comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
Comes from a beef place.
This comes we don't even know. It just gets
from the
dropped
back
off
of the store.
I don't know. I get it from the walk-in.
It was in a box.
Yeah. No, it's true, man. Know where your meat comes from. That's a big thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tyler, you got anything about Wagyu you wanna say before we sign it off?
I just want to go eat some.
I know. I stood next to this guy was grilling last night. I stood next to him, and I was just grabbing slices.
That's why I was sweating so much, because I thought you were actually watching me cook.
No, I wasn't.
Both of you guys.
I was late.
I was
late
shaking there. I barely
here.
kept him on the tongs.
I was just eating, man.
I was late
It
getting
all
here,
good.
and I pulled up right there, and I was like,
Oh my gosh.
oh yeah, I'm here.
Well, thank you guys. I know you guys got a
thanks so
big
much.
day today, and we want to get out of your way. But thank you for giving us the time. We really appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having us too. This
thank
is
you
great.
guys.
I want to thank you for everything you do in educating consumers and just helping share our story and the stories of other farmers and ranchers. What you do is incredible to us, and to have the relationship we do with you, we're just very grateful. So thank you
Love
for
it.
being here.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to many years to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, we're going to sign it off for the Meat Dudes. I'm Evan.
Tyler.
Arlie?
And I'm Taylor.
We got the honorary Meat Dudes here. Let's go.
Honorary.